Hi guys, welcome to Allegheny Homestead. Today we're going to be canning these pineapples using the water bath canning method. And these can also be pressure canned, but it's generally not as recommended just because the pineapples can get too soft and mushy. So if you're new to canning, then the hot water bath method, also known as the boiling water method, is the easiest way to can. However, you can only can foods that are high in acid using this method, and pressure cooking must be used to safely can all low acid foods like meat and vegetables and so on and so forth. So let's get started with canning these pineapples. Now, I will say that for the juice that I will be using to put the pineapples in the jars, I am going to be using the cores of the pineapples and boiling those in water and then pouring that on top of the pineapples. And this will be using the raw pack method. So let's get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm gonna get the jars out of the dishwasher that I washed and sterilized. However, I will say that as long as your water bath canning lasts longer than 10 minutes, it really isn't necessary to sterilize your jars and your lids. So I'm gonna get these jars out of the dishwasher and get them into the canner. I'm gonna fill the canner about halfway with water to cover the jars and start getting that heated up to about 140 degrees. You don't have to be super precise with that, but you want your jars to be hot enough that when you pour that boiling liquid in them, they don't burst. So let's get these jars in the canner. So now we're gonna get our canner filled about halfway with water. In my canner, there's a little mark that says where the halfway point is, so I'm just gonna fill it up to there. And keep in mind, if you're new to canning, that whether you're doing the boiling water method or pressure canning, there needs to be something in the bottom of your canner, so your jars are not sitting directly on the bottom. And usually this will be some kind of like insert like this, or you can even place a dish towel or something in the bottom and then put the jars on top of that. So now that we have our canner on the stove, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the heat on and start getting it warmed up and put the jars in here so they can be nice and warm when we're ready to put boiling hot liquid in them. Now the canner that I have, I think is about 23 quarts, and it can hold 11 of the pint jars. And I really like to can pineapple in the pint jars. So now we're going to make the juice that we're going to pour on top of those raw pineapples. And to do that, we're going to use the cores of the pineapple and we're going to boil them in water for anywhere from 10 to 20, 30 minutes. It depends on how long you're willing to wait. I find my sweet spot is about 20 minutes. To estimate the amount of water that you're going to need to do this, I generally recommend about 3 cups. I like to err on the side of having more than less because I've run out of water before canning pineapples. I'm doing 4 pineapples, so that means I need 12 cups, 0.75 gallons, 3 quarts. And of course, I like to use non-chlorinated, reverse osmosis, or distilled water for this, just because it makes me happier at the end of the day. So let's get this pot filled up and we'll get it on the stove and we'll bring it to a simmer. And we'll get those pineapple cores in there as we're cutting up the pineapples. And that way, by the time we're ready to start packing those jars, that water comes to a boil very quickly and we don't have much wait time. So let's go. Next, we need to get our pineapple cut up and prepared for putting in our jars. The pineapple is really amazing because there's actually no part of this that you can't use in some way. The skins of the pineapple can be used to make a fantastic South American drink called tepache that can be very, very low alcoholic or more alcoholic if you so choose. The top of the pineapple can be used to grow another pineapple depending on what climate you live in, or even grown indoors in cooler climates. And you can compost your pineapple when you're all done with it. I like to take the tops of the pineapples and try to sprout a new pineapple. I like to twist the top off instead of chopping it off. And there we go. And I'm going to save this top now for growing a new pineapple. Now we're going to cut this bottom core off. Now I'm going to cut off the very top. This also I will save for tapache. Just cut down each side. Goes in the tapache bowl. And yes, these pineapples are a little bit green, but they're still delicious. Now to core this, I'm going to cut this entire thing in half down the middle. And then each half I'm going to cut in half again. Now, for each of these quarters, I'm going to cut off the corner to get rid of the core. Now these cores I'm going to place in the pot of water that we just put on the stove. Now for these guys, I'm going to go ahead and cut them into chunks and cut off the rest of this green stuff. Alright, so let's cut these into chunks. Each quarter, I just slice lengthwise first. And then into, I don't know, whatever size chunks you want to eat. Alright, so let's get another pineapple. Alright, I'm going to finish cutting up the last two pineapples and I'll see you at the next step. Alright, so our pineapples are all cut up and ready to go. So the only thing that we're waiting for now is for our pineapple cores that are in their water to reach boiling. And then I'm going to boil them for 20 minutes. So our pineapples have finished boiling. I do want to mention though, as far as a canning liquid for your pineapples, you could use like a sugar water syrup. You could also use pineapple juice, but I just kind of like to do it this way and use as much of the pineapple as I can for all purposes. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off and start filling these jars. Okay, so we have our nice hot jars here. The temperature is still on. It's a low temperature, but it's still on and keeping them nice and hot. All right, so let's get 3 jars out of here and start packing them. Start putting the pineapple in there. Shake it around a little bit, just kind of let it settle a little better. I usually fill my pineapple, really almost all my canning goods, right up to the bottom of the top of the jar, where I'm going to put, this is also where I'm going to fill it with water, as you can see. Now, I can probably fit a little more in here in some spaces, but I also don't want to pack it super tight, because if I do that, it'll be a lot harder to release the air bubbles. So now we have our 3 jars, and I'm going to go ahead and pour the hot liquid in them. And this I want to fill up to give half-inch headspace. The next thing that you have to do is you have to go around with a knife or a spatula and squeeze out any little air bubbles that are trapped. Now, these guys are ready for lids and bends. Put 1 lid on each jar. Nice, clean, washed lids. Screw your bands on. Finger tight. No more. Air has to be able to escape. Alright, now we can place these guys back in the canner and get our next set of jars. Alright, I'm going to get 3 jars. I like to work in 3s. The jars are still nice and hot by the time you get back in the canner this way. I'm just going to finish up the rest of these jars and I'll see you at the next step. So now that we have all the jars in the canner, we have to make sure that the water level is at least 1 inch above the jars. Make sure your jars are completely submerged in water. Now we just have to bring them up to a vigorous boil, and then we can start our timer. Now, depending on your elevation, your canning time will differ. So for me, being at above 1,000 feet, I will be canning these for 20 minutes. All right, so now we wait. All right, so now that these are at a vigorous boil, I'm gonna go ahead and set a timer for 20 minutes and I'll see you when these are done. Now that our timer is done, I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off. I'm gonna let them sit in here for 5 minutes and then we'll remove them. So our 5-minute timer is up and we're gonna go ahead and remove these jars. And it's important that when you remove them, you try to keep them straight up and not tilt them. And I'm just going to set them over here on this dish towel. I like to give the jars a little bit of space between each other. I think they cool off a little faster. You can hear the lids popping already. So I'm gonna let these jars sit here for probably 12 hours. And then after that, I will remove the bands from the jars and test the lids to make sure they have a really good tight seal. If I can't pick that jar up by its lid, that's not a good seal. And either I can choose to recan it right away or put it in the fridge and eat it right away. So tomorrow I'll get these cleaned up, get the bands removed, test the lids, and get them labeled and move them into the pantry. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed today's tutorial on water bath canning raw packed pineapple. So if you did, don't forget to give us a like and we'll see you soon with more tutorials.